or to corporations?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know yet. So I mean, right, I call this the 10-year process. So this is my step 2 of a 10-year plan. And China is a very tough market to break into. And I think Andy can share that too. We spent a day in China talking to China Telecom. And what we basically heard is, yeah, you guys just don't have a chance. So we spent like 3-4 hours talking. They share what they want to do, what we ask our questions. At the end of the day, it's tough. So, but it's a market I'm not going to give up on, and you shouldn't too, right? So it takes time. So I just think it is better to have a team on the ground and to start. Yeah.
So, when you mean by tough, is it the regulation that makes it tough, or is it just
personalities, culture, what?
Well, let's take a step back real quick.
Right.
Just to set the context, is that Hong Kong is for those of you that already know this, I apologize, but probably some of you are like me. Hong Kong is a special administrative province of China. Think of Hong Kong as like a state of China that gets to govern itself. So Hong Kong has different laws and rules. It's actually capitalist. And then there's mainland China. So we spent 99% of our time in Hong Kong, but then, as he said, we did go to mainland China and learn how to, the difference of the two markets. There was a question about whether you want to sell to consumers or enterprises. Obviously, my business, or App47, is an enterprise-focused business, and I would say that you have to look at Asia in two different lights. There's Greater Asia, which is like Hong Kong, Indonesia, the Philippines, India, whatever it is, that whole Pacific Rim is obviously huge opportunity. And then there's mainland China, which is completely different. From an enterprise standpoint, there's definitely opportunities for my company in Indonesia, Philippines, in Hong Kong. In mainland China, there's probably zero opportunity for App47 at this point. Consumer-oriented development or mobile, certainly, again, it's the same equation. There's opportunities all up and down in Asia. We can get into more details if you're obviously most people here like Steve, app developers have successful apps. Getting those apps into China is a completely different ballgame than it is here in the U.S. For instance, there is no Google Play on Chinese Android devices. In China, app distribution is done via the telecoms. They have their own app stores. If you have an iOS device in China, you do have Google's, or not Google, but Apple's iTunes. But iOS is such a marginal player in China, it's ridiculous. It's a flat line, and you have Android that's an exponential line. So, and one more thing I'll mention, and I'll let Z. From an App47 standpoint, because we sell the enterprise, we've noticed that in the last year, the enterprise has really started to take off with respect to like understanding mobility and starting to buy enterprise solutions. I did not get that sense in Asia. So consumer-oriented wise, Asia is far ahead of us in terms of their adoption of like mobility. I mean, I remember reading about years and years ago in like Korea, kids could buy stuff from vending machines on their like feature phones, right? So mobility from a consumer standpoint in China, or not in China, excuse me, in Asia is it's very much ingrained. It's far ahead of where I believe we are in the U.S. And I'll show a video. I could actually show two. But from an enterprise standpoint, I got the crickets chirping when I talked about what we do. And it was very similar to the same crickets chirping I heard here 2 years ago when we started talking about what we do. So I think it's a very interesting standpoint from that.
Right. So I'll try to answer. Yeah. Go ahead.
In regards to specifically China and Hong Kong, what is the developer population like, and what is that you learned about, and what is their level of, let's say, expertise and professionalism?
Right. So I'll answer the why do I think China is tough. Basically, you cannot assume anything. So you cannot assume. I learned to not assume anything at all. So I grew up in Hong Kong. Supposedly, I'm a Chinese. I spent 20 years here. And I went back. So again, Hong Kong is very different than China. Hong Kong, you can operate as an American, and you can function. You go to Philippines, you operate as an American, you can function. Going to China, you operate as an American, you do not function. Now, I don't want to exaggerate, but to the point that you get on a taxi, you can't go anywhere. So that's why I keep saying it's a 10-year process. Don't think you can operate as an American corporation and change all the labels to Chinese and it will sell. It's not going to sell. Now, at least that's what I learned, and that's why I want to put a team there. Not in China yet. I couldn't have the courage to actually set up an office in China just yet.
Well,
I want to learn a little bit more before I step into, because Hong Kong is a relatively friendly place. I don't want to get into too much trouble. I heard a lot of horror stories while there about spending money and just not getting any.
Well, even tactically, so I mentioned that App47 has no chance in China. That's because in order for App47, for a Chinese company to use our service, the data has to live in China. So we would have to set up a data center okay, so the data has to live in China. But it's not like I can walk into China and throw 2 servers and or 2 racks in some data center. I actually have to have a Chinese company or an entity that is 51 or 50% owned.
51%.
50% owned by
51% owned by Chinese.
owned by a Chinese national. So in order for App47 to sell to a Chinese company, I would have to, or we would have to partner with a Chinese company, call it App47 China. It would be 51% owned by a Chinese national, and then we would have to run our infrastructure in China. It's not. I mean, right now, if you're a U.S. company and you use our services, it's running in AWS, right? Mm-hmm. Can't do it in China. So that's why that's why it's a 10-year deal. It's not like you can just walk in and be like, hey, Mr. Chinese citizen, let's form a company real quick, and then we'll start making $1 billion.
Right.
You mentioned your data needs to reside in China. Is it a technical constraint, like with the Great Firewall, or is it
It's a stipulation of the Chinese government.
Okay.
I mean that's basically why you have
Policy.
the Facebook, the Chinese Facebook, Chinese Twitter, Chinese everything, because they shield it off, right? So I want to answer the question about developer education and community. From what I learned, Chinese has great developers. China has great developers in mainland. So I have friends who set up shops in Beijing, in Shanghai, and there's a lot of developers, a lot of high-end developers. Now, the reason I choose to be in Hong Kong again is because of regulation, because of the law and accounting system, a lot of those, and also because of comfort level of the talent. So. We went interview the concept. Well, the talent that we saw is very similar to here. That they want to do something. There is a entrepreneurship concept there. They want to be with a startup to do something. Now, I heard in Beijing there's a lot of that too. What I heard also is that in mainland, a lot of developers like to jump ship. So they work for you for 2 months, jump to another ship, jump to another company. That's what I heard the culture is. Not sure if it's true or not, but I will let you know in a few years, I guess. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was trying to pay attention to a lot of what was going on at that.
Video?
Did you say it was conference?
It was
Right.
a conference. Yes.
Okay. And I saw a lot of entertainment. My focus is on more on entertainment, so that caught my eye. So if I'm hearing you right, it doesn't matter what you're developing, that you can develop for Hong Kong or Taiwan, but mainland China, all the reading I've done is, I saw Oblivion up there, and getting that into mainland China, into their theaters is probably next to.
It's a huge undertaking, right? So let's use Steve as an example. He has. Do you mind? Steve's a famous MoDev guy, right? Everyone knows Steve. So you've got a number of apps in the App Store. You have Google ones now, right? Or Android ones. So you could naively think, hey, I've got this great consumer-oriented app. I want to sell it to China, right? There's 1 billion people there, 500,000 or 500 million of them have smartphones or something ridiculous. If I can get like 10% of that, I'm printing money, right? So you're going to go, so maybe you naively think, well, I just got to, talk to, someone who speaks Chinese and they can, they'll make my app Chinese and I'm good to go. Not even close, right? Because you have the distribution problem when it comes to mobile apps. There is no Google Play in China. So you have to actually partner, again, with a Chinese company. And then you and that Chinese company, then they need to go to 3 telecoms and then sell it to them. And then there's the mind-boggling experience that in China, they don't have a credit card system, or people have credit cards, but it's not really an accepted way of payment. It's more debit-oriented.
Yeah, I don't fully understand, but it's different.
So, when
Everything is different, basically.
So you saw a lot of the entertainment stuff. So I really need, if there's anything I could maybe convey tonight, is that there's China and then there's Asia. And the stuff you were looking at there was really targeting like Asia and the West. Like, hey, look at these cool things we're building. Take this to Europe. Take this to the United States. Because, we heard lots of successful Hong Kong companies selling into China and doing really cool things. I'm thinking iPhone or iButterfly, that guy.
Right. He has a shop in China.
Right. Yeah, but he had to set up a company in China and then get in there. So if you're or were like me, sitting here thinking, if I could only just break into the Chinese market, there's just like, it's certainly possible. And then there's a great book I read before I went to China. It's called China Inc. It was actually written a number of years ago. But it talks about like the big U.S. corporations that set up shop there, like Ford and all these other ones, and the experiences they had, and that's why it's no joke when you say it's a 10-year project. A small software company, I wouldn't even bother. Like you could look at Asia, and we talked to a number of entrepreneurs. As you talked about, we had this roundtable, and there were other people there that were based in Hong Kong, and there was a U.S. entrepreneur there who was based with Accenture, I think.
Yeah, Accenture in Hong Kong.
And I asked him point blank, I was like, what do we do? Because I want to break into Asia, but this China thing just seems like a giant, I'm just hitting my head against a wall. And he said, no, view China differently. Come in, look at Indonesia, look at the Philippines, look at Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a population of 7 million people on an island that's, how big is that island?
I don't know
Tiny.
exactly, but tiny. Like a DC.
As big as DC.
Yeah. And the workforce, you have like, how many universities are in, there's like...
No, they're 15, 10, around that.
Think about DC packed into an island, everything's high, you've got a really young, vibrant community, very well educated. So as far as a developer talent pool in just Hong Kong alone, something that was very appealing, and hopefully Z will share more, he shared his office. That's an incubator, by the way. His office is overlooking the water, in an incubator. And these incubators basically sat us down and said, hey, you're a U.S. company, that's great. Why don't you come to Hong Kong? And oh, by the way, we have these grants that if you set up R&D in Hong Kong and you hire Hong Kong natives, we'll reimburse you. How much? Up to $8 million.
No big deal, right? So they're like, yeah.
And these incubators you had access to green rooms. It's like, I want to make a commercial about my company. When's the last time one of us thought about making a commercial, right, that we'd air on NBC? They do that all the time there, and they have green rooms. It's like, yeah, go ahead in there and do your commercial. We got this media team that'll help you. At one point, do you guys know Navroop with Griffin? We're standing in the green room looking at like this project that these guys are making a commercial for this like startup. And he looks at me and goes, my government has failed me. Because this was an incubator, all right? This is... And the amount of money that these government... And I say these because I just got back from another event when we were talking about Canada, but in general, Hong Kong, the amount of money that they are pumping in to IT is astounding. The innovation coming out there, there's no wonder why... from a consumer standpoint, from Asia, in my opinion, is far ahead of the U.S. as far as acceptance. Some of the apps we saw, I keep pointing that I will, but I will demo something that I saw that just blew me away. That if I saw here in the U.S., people would fall over, in my opinion, in terms of, wow, that is cool. So.
Right. What was that question?
You mentioned continuously Asia. Are you talking about India, or is India a separate market? And India is not talking about that.
That's a fair question. You know what? I'm going to separate India from that.
I'm going to separate too.
So it's a different market.
Right. Just want to go back to, like, if you want to, I'm viewing Hong Kong and Taiwan as a stepping stone, right? At least you get the language. You go there, you get the language, you get the team there. So I view China as a big war that I need to tackle. And if I have a base in Hong Kong, I can go in and fail, come back, go in and fail and come back many times. But from here, it's a far longer deployment, right? So,
But what's interesting about that statement, by the way, is that's why Hong Kong exists for China. So China can experiment with the West and fail and not get pie in its face, right? So that's the beauty of Hong Kong. It's this Chinese thing that's set up that's so free and and very Westernized. And people, one thing I wondered is like, well, how long is that going to last? At what point is do the communists come over and say, screw this? And actually, some Hong Kong people were like, no, you've got it all wrong. This is a perfect thing for China to test. Hey, here's a capitalist thing, and they can fail, and it doesn't reflect poorly on China as a government.
they're actually also testing democracy in Hong Kong, right? So they cannot control Taiwan, right? Taiwan is literally a separate country, but they completely control Hong Kong. If they want to screw it, they screw it 10 years ago. So they're actually testing democracy. They're giving Hong Kong a little bit more democracy, trying to see how it works. China, in itself, is capitalized already, right? From a economy perspective, the political system is very different, and they don't want to relieve control. But in Hong Kong, they can try. So I can agree to this. Like they're using Hong Kong this way, right? If you know of Macau, that's another island outside China. That's the same thing. They're using Macau as Las Vegas, right? So state law says in China there's no gambling. Gambling is illegal. But there's Macau, a Chinese state, that its entire reason of existence is for gambling. So they're, like you can see the Chinese government doing these kind of stuff that they want to experiment something that they, quote unquote, don't approve, but they can do this with these kind of self-governing states.
So Hong Kong is both, it's a bi-directional experiment, right? For Western companies, you set up shop in Hong Kong and you work on breaking into China, but you have this safety net. And it's exactly the same for the Chinese companies setting up shop in Hong Kong and saying, hey, how can we break into the U.S. market?
Yeah.
I saved up now, I got two. Please don't take my picture.
Oh, sorry.
No?
I'm in a post office somewhere, there might be some kind of facial recognition. So you said Android, you have to sell the apps through telecom.
So you can answer that.
I thought Android apps, anybody can distribute those.
Well, anyone can, but how do you get it to the end person? I mean, you could email around the APK, but if you want master...
Don't they have a download? Can't they purchase it off your own server or something?
Well, okay, so technically, yes, I could set up a server, but the problem in China is that at least, and it's... I will try to explain. If there's anyone here that actually knows more about this, please speak up. But the average citizen does not have a credit card. It's very much bank drafted.
Through the telecom.
Exactly. So the telecom bills them essentially immediately. I guess the telecom has access to their account. So when they say, I want this app, 99 cents is withdrawn immediately. There is no form of credit. And it's not because they don't have that system. It's that the culture does not necessarily trust credit transactions. They very much want it to be real.
Well, it's a matter of government control, too. You think the IRS is bad here, for heaven's sake.
That's a good point, yeah.
You might as well just come out and say it.
So the distribution channels in China are very much controlled by the telecoms, which was actually what we had here before Apple, opened up things with iTunes. If you remember, in fact, there's a gentleman here that worked for Nextel, right? In the feature phone days, the telecoms had their app stores, but they didn't do very well, right? And so Apple came out with the iPhone and iTunes, and boom, now telecoms have zero control, which, by the way, telecoms are trying to get back now with Firefox OS. But it's very interesting to look at China and say, look, the telecoms control it.
So you have your Chinese partner that's taking 51% from you.
Yes.
And then you have, Apple or the telecom that's taking another 10, 20, 30% from you.
Yes.
You have 20%. It's got to cost you at least that much to develop your app.
Yes.
Why bother?
It's a great statement. I don't have a good answer for you. That's what I walked away with, too.
And part two of that is, South Africa does the same thing with the 50% ownership. I'm sure there's some other countries, too. But you greatly run the risk of them saying, you know what? This is my company. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
China
It's
did
nice
that
meeting
once
you.
before. They kicked out everybody from the West.
So yeah, I can tell you another story. My dad runs a retail store, in China. That's how I got my education, basically. So they had it for 10 years. And after 10 years, they knew going in that their lifespan is only 10 years. Because after 10 years, they learn everything from you, and they say, nice doing business with you. Now go back. And that's not, that's the norm. It's, so factories that used to be in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong moved to China. And they all know that, okay, after a while, after you've been successful, they take it away. So they all operate business as such, knowing that. So now, that's what exactly just what I want to share. 10 years later, they closed shop, they got money out, and retired. Now, to answer the question about why bother, well, I'll answer that question maybe a few years later. I will come back and say, yeah, don't bother.
Well, and that's one specific example, and that's an app market, and I think the app market is broken there, and that's why if I had the greatest idea, for an app that I think would do well in China, I'd probably try to go to Indonesia or something first, if I felt like from an Asia standpoint.
Right, here is why I want to bother. I think in the future, in 10 years from now, there's only two ways of doing things in the world. You either do things in US way or Chinese way. And everybody in between either falls this camp or that camp because of sheer market power, right? So I look at the world as such, so I want to have both.
He's hedging his bets.
Why would it be just only China or the US?
Well, because
India also has got
right.
Like,
no, right. Well, yeah. So that's my naive view of the world, right? So I mean, you right now China is such that they are closed. They don't want to talk to you. India wants to talk, so it's almost like, so let me put it the other way. There's a Chinese way and everybody else's way, because everybody else wants to collaborate. China does not want to collaborate. China says, this is my way. You either come here or not come here. So they right now will, and will for the longest time, will have another way of their own way of doing things. India and other countries tend to collaborate, tend to like, okay, well, let's work together. So right now, that's how we can sell into places like Africa. We have customers in India everywhere except for China, because they don't like to do things our way. And so that's how I view things, right? I'm not trying to diminish India's influence, right?
But the Chinese are at least direct and honest about it, that this is what we're doing, whereas other countries that say they want to collaborate, really it's only one-way collaboration, where we're going to learn everything that you do, and then we're just not going to work with you, we're going to go off and do it ourselves.
You can say that about a lot of countries.
Well, I am saying it about a lot of countries, but I'm saying at least China tells you right up front, we want 51% and you got a short lifespan here.
Well, not just that. I mean, that is just one aspect of it, right? So we travel halfway around the world and see them and talk to them for, 3 hours. And they basically...
being China Telecom.
Right, China Telecom.
Which is the AT&T or Verizon of China.
Right, the biggest one, right? So they basically say, yeah, there's no chance.
Yeah.
And they say it nicely, but that's the message. Yeah, go ahead.
So, kind of going back to Andrew's point about, so just throwing out an idea for like Google going to China, right? I know they had some problems. What if there was a solution and Google kind of makes it into the Chinese market? Would it still be,
So there actually is promise of that. They did disclose that Google Play will be distributed on future devices in China. They said by this summer, so 2014 maybe, there will be a direct, path. Now, whether or not your app can translate, not like physically translate into Chinese, but just a Chinese citizen finds your app interesting is a completely different ballgame. But keep in mind, that's all new devices sold in China, so it's going to take a long time for Google Play to be a viable channel in China. I think maybe like 2016 or something. But the charts that China Telecom showed us were, I mean, literally it was a hockey puck in terms of device distribution. You had, Android devices going like this, and then you had literally, I've never seen this before, iOS devices going down. Like literally, there's like no market for iOS in China. It's sad.
Right. So let's take that, and I want to go to the truth. Yeah, go ahead.
Circling back to what we were talking about before with the entering into China, I've heard that if you go invest a certain amount of money into China, you don't need to have a Chinese partner owning 51%. I was curious if you know what that number.
We don't know, and that number probably too high for me.
I've also heard that profits made in China have to stay in China.
That is changing. That I know is changing, and that's also another vehicle that they want to use Hong Kong for. It's to allow you to route money out.
We could use all those Walmart profits. Why don't we do that here?
Right.
It's suffice to say it's pretty complicated, my message, another message I hope I leave you with is if you're a small company or even a medium-sized company and you were like, yeah, I'm thinking about China, I would think twice.
No, don't think about China. Think about
look
Asia.
at Z's company as an example of getting a foothold into Hong Kong.
So if you want to talk, call me and we can have coffee. But I want to bring that. So Eddie, start talking about this. This is incubator.
This is an incubator. This looks like like George Mason University or something like that, right? I mean, this is an incubator where they give you space.
That whole complex?
Yeah, and that's just some of it. That's not the whole complex.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's like an auditorium they built. Who was the guy? He invented fiber optics or something.
Yeah.
It was the father of fiber optics. Like this is this is all office space, and they have like cafeterias and atriums. I mean, it is.
So I mean, go back here. This is just one section. So they're building the third.
That big bubble thing you saw is between these buildings over here. We were in this building. This is the water over here. That's the South China Sea. I mean, yeah, imagine this being part of George Mason. That's an incubator for them. Like instead of it being like a little. So if you are into again, these are the services you have as a part of the incubator. If you're building like some sort of wireless technology, they have all the testing so that you can get it certified. That's a wireless testing room. You can see it's lead. You can see inside, so they're doing all sorts of testing on signal processing, and they have experts there. They have like scientists that's like at your disposal.
So that's us. So then we went to Shenzhen.
In Shenzhen, this is the gadget capital of the world. This is where they build. There's like alleys where you can go down. They have factories building, tablets.
Well, your tablets, iPhones, everything.
And this is something interesting. How many of you have a Google, or no, excuse me, an Android tablet? Like, what do you guys have? Like Nexus?
Nexus 7.
Nexus 7. How much did you pay for those?
$200-300.
Yeah.
So that conference that we were at. So there are probably, I'm just going to guess. There's probably 2,000 vendors at this conference that make tablets. 7-inch, 9-inch, 12-inch, any size you want, actually, any spec you want. And so Barg Upender, who comes here a lot, he runs Bobobo, he and I had this great idea. Let's look at, we had an idea, a business idea, so we started talking to vendors about tablet specs. I could get a 1024 by 700, not 700, but 660, what is it?
768.
768. The resolution, that's a pretty nice, 7-inch tablet. Running basically Android, the latest Android with like maybe, what's standard memory in these guys? Like maybe 4 gigs or something. Space, $65. $65. And that was custom spec'd for me. I'd have to buy, they quoted me I had to buy 1,000 units, but you can knock them down to 500, whatever it is. So, I mean, that is literally, I mean, it's a race to the bottom, right? And so we talk about these awesome, the iPad. I saw iPads like basically knockoffs of iPads that you could get for like $100. I mean, it was ridiculous. So that's Shenzhen. It's absolutely amazing from a hardware standpoint. The stuff they're pumping out.
Right.
A knockoff Apple store.
Yeah.
I saw when I was in China. I mean, the whole store was.
Well, they're real stores now. So we actually had MODAP there. We didn't just go there to have fun.
We did Disrupt-a-thon,
Right. So
and it was astounding, the stuff they were showing us. I mean, like literally disruptive. I mean, you know, we disruptive on a whole nother level, the kind of stuff they were showing us. And
and that's you.
of course, yeah, I knocked it out of the park, right, guys? That was my, that was the crickets, because I'm talking about enterprise mobility and managing apps, and it was like, you know, I could hear the hay bale, kind of, you know, whatever, the tumbleweed going by. Okay,
So-
this is something, you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
This is something fascinating. So, and if you, there's another mirror, touch screen, clear screen LEDs. So imagine this window over here being an LED display that actually you can touch and interact with, just like your device. So this guy demoed. This guy's a brilliant. He runs a company. I forget the name of the company.
Cherry picks.
Cherry Picks. They made an app called iButterfly. It is more popular in some countries than Angry Birds, and it's a virtual reality app where they partnered with. Imagine this, like you walk to Target or something, and you hold up your iButterfly app. And it's a virtual reality app, so it's your camera, and you're viewing like the audience or wherever it is, you know, in Target, and butterflies fly by, and you catch them with your camera, like you catch the butterfly, and you can trade them with buddies, and the butterfly is a coupon that you can then present, you know, hey, check this butterfly, and they're unique, you know, and it's become a cultural phenomenon because it's like, hey Z, what butterflies do you have? And people trade them, and there's a value to them because it's like, oh, I've got a butterfly that gives me 20% off whatever jeans at Walmart. So those guys built that app, but now they're building apps that are in clear screens. So Z, can you see the second window? So imagine, before you watch this video, imagine walking into like a Sheetz or a 7-Eleven. You know the big refrigerators in the back? They have those lame stickers. You know, it's like, Red Bull, 25% off. No interaction. Now imagine walking into a 7-Eleven, this is what you see. That's a refrigerator. Do you guys see that? It's a refrigerator with a clear LED screen showing apps.
How fun.
In English.
So that's literally, it's a glass panel showing a video. And then Z, go back to the picture of, what's his name?
Here.
Okay, so imagine that, and then they've added touch sensitivity. So you could go in and say, oh, I don't want to see the ad on Red Bull. I want to see what's the coupon, with beer. And then they've through RFD and sound, I think they've integrated Sonic with your phone, so that you can literally, I could walk up with my phone and I could get, I could scroll through and I could watch the display for Guinness or whatever, and I'd get my little Guinness coupon, like whatever, on my phone. Then I'd walk up and get my 20% off. Absolutely fascinating, and for them, it's like, no big deal.
Right.
So
I fell out of my seat when I saw this.
So it's like holographic. It's like Minority Report. It's like
Which one?
augmented reality. Is that what you meant?
Well, the iButterfly one is
Yeah.
augmented reality. This is running in a clear LED, and also they showed flexible. I mean, it's wild the kind of stuff they're showing, and so like literally you could come up here and start swiping this and interact with this app, but it's running on a clear thing, so it's